All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nun, episode 352 tonight here on Stu and the Nun. Toby can't make it. He is pretty busy down there in Cabo. I was going to try to, and I said, don't. He was trying to move some stuff around. Maybe he'll surprise us and come in, but I told him, don't, just stand down tonight. He gets a pass. But I do have with me, you see here, Command Sergeant Major retired Steve Valley as our guest tonight. Steve is a 29-year soldier, an author, and boy, does he have a lot of great stories from 29 years in boots. Went through a couple different versions of uniforms too. So
a few.
And Steve, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to Stu and the Nun.
Great to be here. You know, I got an email from my buddy Wolf, John Wagner, a few days ago, and he said, I got this great show for you to go on. And about 4 hours later, I got the first email from Rob. It's like, yeah, I'm good for tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. He reached out and he was like, you know, we've got this other show up now, and he's like, he'd be a great fit for Lehman Charlie. And I started looking in your background. I was like, actually, I would like to get him on the show. We'll get him there, but I mean, you know, you can't wrap up 29 years of experiences in a 30-minute episode on our other show. So yeah. So why don't you just great to see you. Where are you coming in from? Where are you joining us from tonight?
I am in Palmetto, Florida, Manatee County, Florida, just south of Tampa,
Yep.
about 45, 50 miles from MacDill and CENTCOM and SOCOM. Been down here more or less for 25 years. We moved up to Fairfax, Virginia for 4 years. My youngest son was attending the Naval Academy, and my oldest son graduated college and ended up working as a defense contractor. He's a captain in the military, an Army reservist, and he's still up there, but we couldn't take the 24/7 politics and the left leaning and everything going on there. So we always knew we'd get back to Florida. So we moved back in 2019, and happy to be in the Sunshine State, the land of freedom.
It is a land of freedom for sure. I know many got a lot of family in Florida, and I know many are stressing over Governor DeSantis about having to wrap it up. But I'm sure there's a couple good options there coming in, so it'll stay great free state for sure. But awesome. Well, I'm out of Buffalo, New York. Rob is.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, me too. Not much longer. It's only a little while, but and then I got Rob down in Arkansas. So we are national. We're from all over the place. But and then Toby, who can't be here tonight. Normally he's in Texas, but also in Mexico, where he's at right now. So, well, hey, great to have you with us. Like I opened up with, 29-year U.S. Army retired. Kind of give our listeners and viewers just a little bit of a background of kind of what joined the military, kind of a couple of the highlights of what you did. We're definitely going to dive into a lot more, but just
sure. Listen, I grew up a Jew in Massachusetts, and I had like two relatives that were in the military. My my godfather, my great uncle Sam, was a first generation Jew who fought Hitler. He was D-Day plus three, I think, with Patton's Third Army. Never talked about his World War II experience. Died on the operating table when he was like 94. And my other relative was I had two uncles. One, my father's brother served 2 tours in Nam, is suffering from horrendous cancer right now. He lives up in very close to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And my other uncle, Peter, Peter Genetasio, we got the French, we got the Jew, we got the Italian. Was sort of a mixed breed. We're American mutts. But his highlight was serving in the brig in the JFK. He was a sailor, and he was a punk from Dorchester and in Boston, and he I think he spent more time in the brig than on Liberty when he served in the Navy. But I think it was a little bit before Vietnam that he got out, and I joined the Massachusetts National Guard when I was in college. I got recruited to play hockey in college and got injured my senior year. I was a Division I hockey player in Massachusetts, and hockey's sort of big in Massachusetts, as it is in Buffalo. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
And my shoulder never healed, so I decided to not play hockey and actually pledged a fraternity. We were very similar to Animal House, and my grade suffered that first semester. So I thought I didn't want to take the shit from my father about him paying for my college. So I joined the National Guard to pay for my college, and I was a drunken infantryman in college for a few years. Was 11 bullet catcher for a few. Saw a position for an E5 over at the Charlies. So learned mortars, then learned FDC, and stayed in the infantry for a few more years. I met my wife, who was then my girlfriend there. I had graduated college, and I used to go back once a month to North Adams from Boston, which was a 3-hour ride, just to see her and drill. But it all came to an abrupt stop when I was driving home after a rip-roaring weekend of living in the field. And I don't know if you know Route 2 in Massachusetts. It's a 2-lane highway. I was driving in the right-hand lane. When I woke up, I was in the median on rough ground about 200 yards from a bridge and passed out from sleeping. When I woke up, I think my fingernails were still in the dashboard. That's when I knew it was time to transfer out to a closer unit.
Yeah.
So that jumped to the field artillery. Spent a few years there. Went to MOS school like we all did. Learned FDC for the big 98 millimeter guns, and stayed there for a while. I mean, until in those line units, rank is tough to get. I was an E5, and when you're in FDC, there's only one E6 position. There were three E6s, so I
Yeah.
knew. I mean, I could have been in 29 years and retired an E5 if I stayed there.
Especially in the guard where you're
Oh
not
yeah,
army,
yeah,
who wants to be in that, get promoted and stay in that area. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And the new unit was in my hometown of Brockton, and uh, somebody told me, I mean, I had a college degree in English communications. I worked for a small cable news station. I never knew that the Army had public affairs and news and things. I just never knew it. I mean, I don't know why I didn't know it. I mean, I had a college degree. Did you know when you were young that Army had public affairs?
No, mine was just airborne infantry. It's all I knew. Just
Yeah,
jumping out of
it,
plane on the ground.
that's all I knew was grunt and living in the woods. And somebody told me about it. So I contacted a unit, and they accepted me. So first 10 years living in the woods, and I was getting tired of it too. I mean, I was a dad. I had one kid, then two kids, had a great wife, still married 35 years, 36 years. I was getting tired of humping in the woods and shifted to public affairs. And all of a sudden, I was an E5, I was an E7 within 3 years, and moved to Florida, transferred back to an infantry brigade. How's that for you? I mean, I went back to the infantry.
You saw how both sides lived.
I did, and I like both sides.
Yeah.
Listen, as we were talking before the show, public affairs right now, you've got people who grow up, go right to public affairs, just like anything cross training. They don't know what it means to be an align unit up front. I mean, they know one thing living in a hotel. I had that benefit of serving in as a ground pounder, as a gun bunny. I had that background. So by the time I got to public affairs, I had no problem. When we were out in the field doing stories with infantrymen, I could speak their lingo. You get other people who just didn't have any idea of what these
Yeah.
guys were about. And it was all guys back then too. I mean,
Right.
there were
Right.
no females in the infantry or the field artillery back then.
Were there females in the public affairs?
There were, and my commanding officer was a woman. My sergeant major was uh, a big time Italian guy, Dom Di Natale. We absolutely hated each other. He told me that I would never make E7, and I made command sergeant major, and he retired a sergeant major. And but when we served with each other, we hated each other. Outside of that, we were best friends.
Yeah.
We, I mean, we're just like oil and water serving together. And I don't
Right.
know what it was. We just never hit it off.
So let me ask you real quick, kind of go back. So you're
Yeah.
FD in the mortars. So were you
Uh huh.
81 or deuce or 60s?
81s.
Okay. So you
81s.
were on plotting board.
Oh
And
yeah, 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 absolutely.
I
But
said,
but I first learned how to, I mean, you gotta set the base plate. I mean, I learned first and then gravitated to FTC. Yeah, we were plotting on the board, and that
yeah.
was I didn't use a computer for FTC until I went to the 98s. We had the old Bucks. Remember the old Texas Instruments?
Yeah. Yep. So I spent most of my career as 11 Charlie. So
Oh,
yeah.
all right, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
So
Yeah,
when you told me that, I'm like, oh, we're gonna go back a minute. So
yeah.
it was so, and I mean, that, how was that transitioning? We're gonna get a little bit specific. How was that transitioning to the artillery? Did you find that, was that kind of like a culture shock, and how they did they do things that much different, or was it like, I kind of know a good part of this already? This isn't going to be much of a learning curve.
The field artillery moved a lot more
Hmm.
than mortars did. I mean, at least in my infantry unit, when we dug the base plates in, we were there for a few days, and I mean, we'd switch firing points, but for the field artillery, it was like we were in, and I was on the Advon. We would shoot, move, and communicate. We were switching firing points every day, and I mean, I don't know if every field artillery unit is like that, but the one I was with, the one Alpha 101 in Brockton, Massachusetts, they were a pretty good unit. I mean, we got evaluated by regular Army, and they scored, I mean, hundreds across it. I mean, they were an excellent battalion, an excellent firing battery. The senior leadership, we had guys that were former, like, 25th ID. I mean, they all transitioned into the guard. But these guys, the first sergeant, the E7s, the smokes, those guys were freaking awesome. And I mean, they just passed down their knowledge. And they had two E6s as FDC chiefs. One of the E6s, his brother was the E9, the first sergeant, so he had to live up to a certain level. So, and
Yeah.
I thought I liked both of them, but I think maybe the infantry I liked better because I was younger and we were more hard charging back then. When you get to the field artillery, it was like freaking set up. Yeah, we're moving at 03. It's like, come on, guys, I can't even freaking sleep for 4 hours.
Yeah, well, when you're having to hump it everywhere, mortars tend to sit in one place, and unless you're in four deuce, not to
Yeah,
get too into mortar geek talk, right? Your
yeah,
counter, not really too much of a worry. Counter battery can be a bitch for the artillery, so
yeah, yeah.
that's
Oh
they got to
yeah.
move it. Now in the four deuce land, you move like you do in the artillery because you're throwing it up there so high that counter battery's getting you too. So, and you're shooting about the same size shell at 107 millimeter at the time, right? So it's
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
you know,
No, I had some good times. We did
yeah,
we did one training in the Cape Cod military reservation. We had this old ranger who was the 3 for the battalion, and he got this great idea that he wanted to take one firing battery and do hip shoots, just no plotting, no whatever. We'd get on Hueys back then, like 6 of us would be one squad, and we practiced for like freaking a week, and then all the brass came in and they brought the families in, and the pilots. I mean, we're talking Huey, so you know this is freaking like early 90s, all right? I mean, before the Blackhawks were even there. So they flew us over the Cape Cod Canal to get us all relaxed and brought us in, and we got out there freaking, and we're firing still. I mean, we had the general direction. Like, I was FTC and they're looking at me and it's like, guys, I think we're supposed to go fucking this way. All right. I don't have a board. All right.
Yeah.
Either we do it here, it lands in Route 6 on the highway, or we go the other way and it lands in the Cape Cod Canal. So let's try there. And we were up. I guess there was some record that we were trying to beat, and we missed it by like 6 seconds because somebody fell coming off the Huey, and either fell going off or fell going on. So we missed the record by like 6 seconds. But
Yeah,
that was fun times.
that was a good. That's a the some of the. So I did half my career active, half guard, and
Yep.
that's fun stuff of the guard is. And I should tell people this is, we're active duty. They know they're there. They can't quit. They can't do anything. And you just get a lot of bad attitudes. The guys in the guard, they don't. There's not those sweat off them if they don't show up for a weekend. Like, they don't care. They can literally quit. So you try to make it as fun and exciting as you can be.
Yeah.
So Monday they're going back to school or work or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
So, and you only got that one weekend, maybe a 4, a 5, lucky, or 2-week AT. You got to make it where they want to show back up the next.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, you want to keep them engaged, and that was always a thing as a senior leader. I mean, what are we doing this weekend? I mean, these guys aren't going to show up. I mean, you got to keep them engaged, and not in freaking classrooms either with the annual freaking training for, I mean, you've been through it. The December drill is complete bullshit. I mean, we could do without that.
Everywhere, right? It's all your mandatory trainings and all that. Maybe you're going to Christmas dinner or whatever.
Oh.
But so let me ask you. So you went into the, short of being, in a water purification battalion, probably going to public affairs is about the biggest swing of culture shock from the combat arms. How was it what were those drills like, to be like, hey, let's read some articles and figure out how we could write them better? So, I mean, how was that? Like,
it was a culture shock. I mean, I had to change the way I talk. I'm from Boston, and everyone from Boston uses the word fuck in their normal lexicon. And I still do. I'm almost 60 years old and I still use it, but you can't do that when you're hanging around a bunch of brass. And we'd be out doing stories on promotion ceremonies, the grip and grins, completely boring. We also got some great missions. I mean, we went out to the NTC one year and we did a rotation out there, went out with the night vultures, and there was a guy there, Major Henry Huntley, who ended up a 2-star that I kept in touch with. He had us do the welcome video for troops that were doing rotations at the NTC. So it's those little connections you make that it makes it all worthwhile. But I mean, I had some great guys. I mean, we closed out our trip from the NTC. A guy I went to college with, who was another fraternity brother, was in my infantry unit, but he dropped out for a while. I didn't know he went to OCS. So he came back with us. So my best friend in the unit was a captain, and I was an E5. So, we had to be careful a little bit. So we had the last 2 days off from the NTC, and the commander said, "We're flying out of Vegas." And we said, "It's all we needed to hear." I was sitting there with 3 captains, and they rented a minivan, got a case of Bush and a fifth of Bushmills, and we finished it in 2.5 hours till we got to Vegas. And it was just things like that, the memories that you have. I mean, I still remember one of the guys died last year of cancer, but I still talk to the other two captains. I mean, one of
So
them was a very good friend, and it's just lifelong friends that you make no matter what sect you're in. I mean, I went to basic training with a few guys from Massachusetts, and you know this. I mean, you don't see each other for 25 years, and it's like, how come you never say, how come you never called? It's like you pick up when the
you're
last time you saw each other, and it doesn't matter that you didn't see it.
yeah. So I just gotta go back to that story about Vegas. Were you
Yeah.
the designated driver?
Oh shit, no. You think they let an E5 drive? One of the captains drove.
So that's how
Jesus.
they weren't infantry captains, were they?
He was an air cav captain, and the other two were infantry captains. So we
Really?
had three grunts and an air cav. The air cav drove. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, air capture. I was like, because the infantry guys would be like, they'd be like, no, you're
They
driving.
had they brought the Bushmills and the freaking case of Bush. And I mean, that's a 2 hour drive, 2.5 hour drive. Like in the morning, we left the base at 9. We got to Vegas by noontime. They opened up the door and we all fell out of the freaking vehicle. I mean, we didn't even eat breakfast. We just had booze in our system.
That sounds like a good start to a
Oh,
vacation.
look at Wagner. Look who's commenting now. It's
Yeah,
Wagner.
yeah. Oh, but so there definitely was a culture shock.
Yeah,
And I get what you mean. Just it's a different environment and culture when you get away from the combat arms,
yeah,
especially you get to something like PAO where it is you're around a lot of brass and you're kind of you're just conducting yourself in a more to lack of a better word, civilized way, um,
absolutely.
civilianized way. Maybe that's the right term. But so you went to combat. You did a combat tour in Iraq, and that was with
Hmm.
also right.
That was with public affairs. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a first sergeant. What didn't go over for a sergeant because back then the senior NCO for an MPAD were just an E8.
Mm-hmm.
And I get over there, and Lieutenant Colonel Dan Baggio was the first of all, an old guest of yours, John Wagner, Wolf.
Yeah.
We got to Kuwait, and he was like the first person I met in Kuwait. A short guy, and I'm a short guy, but this guy's shorter than me.
Well,
And
sure.
and he showed up with a full bird colonel and a sergeant major. And the reason why he got the name Wolf is because he gets things done. And the only prerequisite I had was to sending the unit up. And I talked to my boss, who was a my boss was a beautiful blonde woman, and people looked at that first, but they didn't realize that her dad retired an infantry colonel, and she had two master's degrees, one in English literature and the other one in aeronautical science. So the beautiful blonde was also a rocket scientist. So and people underestimated her, but I told her, I said, I'm not going over the berm unless we have Kevlar. You're talking January 2004, and it was still bad there. And
Right.
Wagner coordinated it. Wolf ended up coordinating. I don't know how he did it, but he got all of our 20 members front and back plates. So that's the only thing I required to go over the berm and into Iraq. And Wagner made that happen. And ever since then, we're talking 21 years ago. I mean, we've been thick as thieves for 2 decades out of that sole act right there.
Yeah. No, I can see it. That's why he's the wolf. He like
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction. He's your favorite right there. And don't even tell him how good his coffee is. He knows how good his coffee is. The so you said when you went over, you were an E8. That wasn't the MTO didn't call for a diamond first sergeant, but
No,
we're
so we got into Baghdad at the CPIC, the Combined Press Information Center, and Dan Baggio was the Army Ranger, uh, about 6'3", a complete beast. He was from Third Corps. Uh, he served in probably Kosovo. I mean, he was a combat vet. Already had the CIB. I mean, and we got over there, and he pulled me aside and he said, "I don't know what kind of shit this is, but my senior NCOs all wear the diamond." And I told him, I said, Colonel, I mean, public affairs, it doesn't require a diamond. He took it upon himself to call somebody back at the Pentagon, and like a week later, the ranger gave me a promotion ceremony, and wouldn't you know, I got this big giant putting the freaking rank on my shoulders, and you get the blood rank. Can't
Yeah.
do that anymore, but that that hurt for a little while. So I was an E8, a master sergeant for like 2 weeks in Baghdad. Didn't matter for pay, but when you have that diamond in those three up, three down, it sort of gives you a little bit more respect. So I ended up at top.
No offense. I know you retired as sergeant major, but
Yeah,
spent 7 years as a diamond first sergeant. Turned down sergeant major twice,
yeah,
and I found through my time that it just seems to be there's a respect for the first sergeant that not
yeah,
even a right. There's just everyone has had a first sergeant, and I
yeah,
think it comes from a lot of soldiers. Obviously, they're not close to a sergeant major, and they probably should never be, right? Because that's usually not a good thing, right, for your normal soldier. But
yeah.
they know they're top, right? They know the guy that made sure they got what they needed to conduct. Speaking from an infantry perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They that was the guy who had their back, who rode their ass, but also was out there with them. And I think that has built a respect that the diamond pulls like no other rank, in my opinion. I really don't think I've ever seen one.
I agree. I mean, you not only knew everything about your job, but you're also the father, the mother, the psychologist,
Yeah,
the health counselor, the stuff. I mean, I had pregnancies with female student with soldiers that we had to deal with. I had troops that were living the life as like sex goddesses over there in the green zone. I mean, and plus to coordinate everything. I mean, I had marriages break up. I mean, most
yeah,
of it, I mean, minus the everyday stuff, which you get accustomed to, but it's all the other shit that really it just kept me up at night because everyone's I mean, I had one soldier whose wife was doctor shopping trying to get her husband home. Every other day we'd get another call from Specialist Gardner's wife. She had this other deadly illness. She was doctor shopping with a Red Cross. And I finally got tired of it and said to my boss, Amy Conley, I said, Amy, you got to deal. This is a female to female thing. This woman already hates me. And the soldier is petrified of me because I took him aside and I said, here's what your wife is doing, and he wouldn't believe that his wife was doing that. He really thought she was sick, and it was screwing him up mentally. He
right,
left his Kevlar vest in a Humvee. Somebody stole it. What what are we going to do? You got to do an Article 15 and have him pay for it. It's stuff like that that's going to get people killed, and you
yeah,
don't need that extra stress. You're already getting shot at and bombed at every day. You don't need your wife trying to, you know, play psychological games with you and get you home. So Amy finally talked to her, and that stopped. And there's nothing worse than getting a Red Cross call as a first sergeant. You don't know what happened, but after the first couple of times, you sort of knew. Oh shit! It's freaking Wednesday. Here comes another Red Cross call.
yeah. That's well, like you said, it's the daddy of the unit,
Yeah.
and when you have something like a Red Cross, you're I'm sure you're the same way. I don't know any first sergeant that hasn't been or platoon sergeant or anything. Your first thought is whatever it takes to take care of this soldier,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
99.999% of the time, it's legit,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, whatever we can do to take care of them, we got you covered. Let's get you out of here, whatever it takes, right? Whatever the issue is.
That's
So,
your job. That
the-
that's just being human, man.
right,
Honestly.
I do it with my
Mm,
own my company, right? Something
yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
you punch out and go take care of what you got to take care of, right? Well, we got
Family first.
right. So to have someone take advantage of that, yeah, it was even a stress on you because how many times is that crying wolf or crap? What if it's a real one, right? You always got to just luckily I'm
Like
hoping it was, but yeah,
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You expected the call, and you knew it was that her after the after the second or third week, and that's when I went to my boss and I said, you gotta nip this in the bud. I mean, it's killing Victor. He's already got to pay freaking $600 for the Kevlar helmet and the freaking Kevlar vest. I mean, the guy's a spec four. He's not making much more than that, and she's pissing away his freaking paycheck.
right. So you were downrange. So to give us a little bit about what Inside the Fortress is, and Amazon, which Rob will put up on the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like from what I looked at and what I understand, it was just you kind of just like I was writing a blog back when I was deployed, and we
Yeah.
blog been a big thing. It looks like you kind of took that. You just kind of talked about what it was like a year in the life of a PAO guy downrange. Is
It
that
was there were a million stories of the door breakers, and they deserve every story that they have. Guys like David Bellavia and all the SEALs and the freaking Green Berets. I mean, those guys are the heroes. I mean, I mean, they're facing the shit every day. What I did, and I started keeping a journal, and I started off writing a few times a week, and I kept it up through the entire tour. I mean, we saw some wild stuff in Baghdad, right in the green zone at Biop at Camp Victory. Uh, I mean, it was insane. And when I got home, I started looking at the journal, and I started reading it, and I was an avid MASH watcher. I mean, I watched MASH. I didn't care about just like music. I don't care that these people are liberals or they hate whatever. I like the show. I like the
right?
music. I don't
Right.
care about them personally. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, this could really be like the MASH of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And that's how I
Do you feel like
went.
characters? I mean, I same thing. I literally grew up watching MASH. Luckily,
Mm.
got to go to PLDC in Korea, right where they filmed the opening scene. That's
Oh,
actually
nice.
mountain
Nice.
right above my.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved it. So, did you find that you had those same kind of comedic, strange, awkward, weird characters, and just think,
Jesus. Remember General Mark Kimmett and Dan Senor, the spokesman for I I was in charge of every one of their media events for 6 months while Kimmett was there. They used to call it the Senor Kimmett Show, the Baghdad Follies, based off the Saigon Follies from Vietnam. These guys were freaking horrible people. Uh, Senor was there as a dress rehearsal to take over the White House press secretary, and he failed miserable. And Kimmett was a one-star, a freaking warrior, ranger, com- uh, deputy commander of 18th Airborne Corps, but he was there alone, and he was the biggest asshole I've ever met in a uniform. Completely qualified as a soldier. I mean, besides the fact, but his peers hated him. His PSD hated him. The people who worked with him hated him. And these guys, at the end of the day, all they cared about was how many hits they got on Google. I mean, I walked behind them. I had moved back to the embassy, the Republican Palace. We're all living in trailers. I was in a single trailer. I'm sure these guys had like two or three. I mean, they were living in triple wides with probably, masseuses and shit like that in it. But I heard them talking. They were comparing how many Google hits they got at the end of a day. That was like their mission in Baghdad, to make life miserable and to get as many quotes in the media as possible. And I witnessed that for 6 months, and it was like, guys, this is freaking war here, and all you're worried about is seeing your name in print and doing media interviews. It was a riot. I mean, we had General John Abizade, who was the CENTCOM commander back then, and he came in one night, and he was there briefly, and he did a media opportunity. It was on Divids. That's when Divids just got deployed. I trained everyone on Divids in Iraq back in 2004. So we did a Divid shoot, and Kimmett was there as a one star, and I they did it in my building, and we're walking back after the after Abizade addressed the worldwide press, and Abizade's a wonderful, great leader, humorist, got a personality. They're walking back to my office, and somebody asked Kimmett. They went, "Hey, General Kimmett, what do you think about General Abizade?" Abizade turned around and said, "How the fuck would he know? He slept through the entire thing." It was like,
and I was eight. I think it was a 4 star or
he
three,
was a four-star, yeah, yeah. But I mean, he had that quick sense of humor, which Kimmett never had.
and Kim
You know,
was right. Was Kim in a 2 star?
no, he's listen. Kimmett left Baghdad after 6 months,
Oh,
a 1 star,
well,
and I had a '06 tell me in Baghdad. We did a tour of Abu Ghraib when all that shit was happening. I we brought like a busload of media. It was a well orchestrated tour. General Jeff Miller was the 2 star in charge of Abu Ghraib. I
yep.
think he came from Gitmo, and they purposely brought him to Abu Ghraib to straighten everything out. And we handpicked the media. I mean, you had Wall Street Journal, you had New York Times, CNN, all the big players, and everything was set. Everyone understood that if they didn't get picked, they had, the Associated Press. They could get their stories. Kimmett, behind everyone's back, sent a lone reporter. I think he was a stringer from the Wall Street Journal to meet us at Abu Ghraib, which pissed everyone off and pissed General Miller off too. So right off the bat, we start off negative. The tour went brilliantly. It was a freaking riot. I'll never forget, and I wrote it in my book. All the prisoners, and there were a lot of bad guys there back then. They had one guy with a prosthetic leg holding his prosthetic leg with a bullhorn, speaking perfect English at the bus because they were making a scene. My
Right.
only question was, how in the hell did this guy get a bullhorn into prison? I mean, you can't stick
Yeah,
that in yourself. I
where,
mean, that.
yeah, where'd you hide that at? That's that. Yeah. So
Newman, or yeah, I mean, what?
yeah,
But so we got out of the prison, and General Miller's aide came up, and I was driving with Lieutenant Colonel Dan Baggio. Then we were in an armored up vehicle, and everyone hated Kimmett. And this guy came over, and listen, I'm a first sergeant. I know nothing about '06 and above. I don't know how that rank works. He started talking to Baggio, and Baggio told the colonel, "No, Top's good. He's one of us." And he said that when you go to 1 to 2 star, most of it is by the recommendation of your peers. And he said, General Miller said, there's not a chance in hell that Kimmett would ever see 2 stars. And sure enough, back at CENTCOM, I was working as a contractor. He retired as a 1 star because he made enemies of everyone. I mean, above him and below him, and he retired a 1 star.
yeah, 1 star is not going to get you on the boards that you need to be on, and the lifetime. Most people don't realize you get 3 star or above, 3 or 4. You're kind of still kind of in the army to a degree. Look at who's going to be the new CJCS.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, you're kind of still committed. They still advise you. The military still comes to you. You're kind of on. You're kind of turned into a contractor to give advice and guidance to the military about things. I mean,
These
it's
guys are so smart. I mean, I had a chance when I was at CENTCOM to brief commanders like Dempsey, Petraeus, John Allen, Mattis, Austin. These guys are CEOs. They have so much knowledge, and it's not only the knowledge, but they see 6 to 9 months where normally guys at our level, we're thinking short term of a month to 3 months. They're looking 6 to 9 months out, and pretty much they're usually dead on. I mean, they know exactly what's going to happen. They know all the tools. They know all the players. They can see all the diplomats, and they know what they're working for. These guys are really talented.
yeah, yeah. As long as they don't try to get too political, even though
Oof.
they still are kind of looked at to be a little bit apolitical. And the ones that have went political, it hasn't turned out too
Look
well.
at look at General Allen. I mean, this guy wrote a freaking letter of recommendation for my son at the Naval Academy. He was never political when I knew him as a 4 star Marine. I mean, the guy was a wonderful leader, wonderful person, and then he came out for Hillary Clinton and made a complete ass of himself.
Right, right. Yeah, those that have that they seem to pick the wrong side each time.
Yeah,
So you wrote this book. So you got back. You looked at. You kind of wrote all these like a diary or journal as you were there.
yeah, yeah.
when did you start looking at it, putting it together, going, "Hey, this may be something that people would want to hear or read," or how did you come up with the idea that I want to publish this?
I started and it took a long time. I don't know if it was PTSD, but I'd start writing like a freaking month and then I wouldn't touch it for 3 months. And I got back and I got back and I got back and thank God for computers, because if I had to type it, it never would have got done. But I ended up with a rough draft probably a year after I got back, and it was like 350 pages. I mean, realize the time that I was in Baghdad. I mean, we had Najaf, we had Fallujah twice, we
Yeah.
had Abu Ghraib, we had the Abu Ghraib courts martial, we had the transition into MNFI, we had I think Zarqawi was killed when I was there, or
Was
Saddam's sons were killed there.
was Saddam snatched up then?
Saddam's was I was at Fort Stewart mobilizing 2 weeks before we got there
Oh,
when the soft troops got Saddam in the cat hole there.
yeah.
So and I remember saying to my commander, Amy Conley, I said, you know, maybe this won't be so bad once we get to Baghdad. Maybe everyone will fall into line.
You
That
jinxed
that
that one.
I put that in my book, and it was like, yeah, not so much, huh?
Yeah, that's like
I mean,
saying,
we had Sadr come alive. I mean, do you remember how the battles with Muqtada Sadr? I mean, in Sadr City and all around Baghdad. I mean, that was some vicious shit going on there.
yeah, I had my company was deployed, or they took part of my company, and then also my old company commander was a First Brigade, First Cav commander there, and that's he had
Yeah,
so
we
uh,
fell under First Cav for a while, and then 3 Corps, and then MNFI. I mean,
yeah,
First Cav, we got there just with First Cav, December, January 2004, and
yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
the best thing First Cav did was build that huge PX on Camp Victory.
yeah. Then Colonel Abrams was my now retired
Yep.
general, my own
Yep.
company. We've stayed good friends, but he and I would write each other back and forth there because, like I say, they took 2/3 of my company
Yeah.
without level and deployed them over there. So they were all there or 4 to 05, and I would touch base with him and like, how are my guys doing, that kind of stuff. And because they were, they were in his responsibility, but detached way down. So, but
I remember working with then two-star Chiarelli, who was a great guy. I mean, he
yeah,
coined me. I mean, I set him up with some stuff, and all of a sudden I turn around and he coined me. But what a decent guy. I mean, strong leader. I mean, cared for the troops. But I mean, I Dempsey. You remember what they did to first AD over there? When I got there, Dempsey was in Baghdad. They sent half his troops home to Germany, then they extended them and pulled them off the plane and from home and brought them back to Baghdad for like 6 months. Could you imagine living through that? Living through, I mean, the initial assault into Baghdad, finally making it through, going home, being with your family for a week, and then going, dude, you're going back to the freaking Baghdad.
yeah, it happened with 10th Mountain in
Yeah.
2007, Afghanistan. They were being replaced by 82nd, and a couple of battalions made it all the way back to Drum. And when they landed, the families were told right before they landed,
Oh,
because we were surging in '07 and extending them and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, same thing. They did it twice, but
it'll freaking kill me, man.
yeah, that's why a lot of people get out and don't finish careers and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
So you went over there, you did that. You came back. That was your tour there. Did you spend the rest of your time in CENTCOM or in the Florida area?
I did militarily. I ended up I found a position at the Pentagon as the Deputy Sergeant Major for Army Public Affairs. So I'd go up there for like 6 weeks a year, got promoted to Sergeant Major finally, did the academy. Then I got bored at the Pentagon because Phil Prater was a great sergeant major for public affairs. He spent like 6 years in there, and he brought me along, taught me the ropes. He transitioned out. It finally killed him, and it was time for me to go. I got promoted at the Pentagon to sergeant major. Uh, got promoted by one of my favorite officers in the world, Major General Mary Eater. Brought my family up there. Uh, Wonderful time. Then I went to Japan, found a reserve tour. I go over there for 6 weeks a year, get full credit, take a rest. I was working as a contractor at CENTCOM, so CENTCOM. I mean, you had two wars going on there. I was working in the jock, so it was 12-hour shifts. I figured I go to Japan as far away and work 8 to 4, 8 to 5 as the sergeant major, do little to nothing, just cruise for 6 weeks. It's funny because the day I was flying over there, and this is a premonition of what happened in 2011. If you go back to 2011 in Japan, all right, I fly out of Tampa to Dulles, got my orders, got my passport, land at Dulles, lost my passport. Called my wife and I said, I can't effing believe this. I lost my passport. She goes, I got a bad feeling about this. Come home. You're a sergeant major. You can talk your way out of it. I said, no, no, I'm all right. I made some phone calls. I could get in country with my orders. And I said, fine. No, I'm good. I mean, I got to go get my good year in. Right before I boarded the plane, they said, is Sergeant Major Valley at the gate? And I go up there and the stewardess said, "Did you lose something?" And I said, "You know I lost something. Did you find something?" They found my passport.
Just fell out somewhere or something like
Just fell out in the
that.
seat, whatever. So we get there Monday through Thursday. I'm freaking working 8 to 4. I'm up 24/7 because, as you well know, when you go from the East Coast time to Japan, you cross that date line. I was up I was going to bed at 10 o'clock, up at midnight, and up, you know, so I was tired, but every night, and I thought it was normal. In Japan, you're on that ring of fire.
Mhm.
Every night you'd get the little rumbles, and I had never been in an earthquake. I was in Florida. I mean, we had hurricanes. I grew up in Massachusetts. We had blizzards,
Right.
and every night, I mean, you'd feel the bed shake. I was staying in the Air Force Inn at Yokota Air Force Base. Friday, the world turned upside down. Remember the big Fukushima
Yeah.
earthquake? I was there 90 miles from ground zero. First time in my life in the military I've ever been scared. I mean, you can take cover from bullets, you can find cover from bombs, you can drive through an IED or an ambush. You can't do shit in an earthquake.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. And I knew it was bad. We had a couple local nationals working in our office, and I saw the look on their face. I carried one of them out. We had like a 25-year-old government building that was swaying like this, and that's when I knew it was bad. So we evacuated, came back in, and then we watched that tsunami, the one that everyone saw 12 hours later. We were watching it live on TV. So my wife still laughs. I called and left a voicemail. I said, first of all, I'm okay when you turn the TV on. I'm okay. Call me when you can. Everything's good. It's better than it looks. And I mean, we had a nuclear meltdown there.
Right.
Thousands of people died from that tsunami. And I immediately asked the woman we were working with, do you have relatives out there up there? It was only 90 miles away,
Right.
and fortunately they didn't have anyone there. So that was the one good thing. But that turned in and immediately to a 24/7 operation. It turned into a 4-star command. So I went there to get a break from the 12 24-hour break, op tempo, to a 12-hour shifts, and they kept me there for 3 months.
Yeah.
I
That's
was
six.
supposed to, yeah, it was
That extended, huh?
is like, yeah, I mean, they couldn't let me go. I mean, they pulled somebody over from Paycom, one of the 4 stars, and upgraded it to a 4-star command. 4-star command. So, I mean, we had like 1,000 people come into Yokota, and most of them were Navy. I mean, Paycom was all Navy. My '05 boss from the Air Force got replaced by a Navy '06, and I knew him from CENTCOM, so I was good. He went, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" I said, "Hey, sir, how you?" And but yeah, I went there to take a break, and that's the kind of the shit that I always rolled into whenever I served with a different unit.
Yeah, that's as Rob points out, yeah, worst places to be stop loss than Japan. Except maybe when there's a nuclear meltdown and like half the country's been washed out to sea and
They put on the Marines going in there. They wouldn't let me go in there because we already had staff, and they put on, I don't know, what are they, tachometers or
yeah,
I mean, every day they had to freaking put on a new one, and it's like, Jesus, what's your worst thing? Getting shot or getting radiation poisoning and dying 3 months later? I mean, ugh.
yeah, yeah. So you're over there for that. So that turned into like you said, you jinxed yourself. Like, oh, it's gonna be a chill little time to 8 to 5.
Yeah, so I
Stay
spent
in
a
the
couple years there, and then I didn't know at the time you had to put your name in and you had to apply for command sergeant major, and I graduated from the sergeant major academy in 2009. Unlike the vice president and candidate Tim Waltz, I could call myself a sergeant major, and
yeah.
I've got my diploma on my office wall that I actually did graduate. But I applied for, this is how screwed up the Army is, all right? A brand new press camp headquarters was being established in San Antonio, Texas. So that means I had to put on the mileage waiver, 1,500 miles. I was south of Tampa. I had no problem. I wanted the job. So I checked it, put my name in, and find out I didn't get it. And it was like, what the hell's going on here? They gave it to a freaking infantry E9 who had no experience in public affairs. All right. The posting said you've got to have this MOS. You've got to be certified. And so I did a courtesy. I emailed our big daddy was a 222nd MP brigade. Uh, that's who the 205th fell under. I emailed the command sergeant major of that. I said, hey, just want you to know, Sergeant Major, I submitted for this. I didn't get it, but the guy who did get it is not MOS qualified. So if you need any assistance with me training him or getting him registered for school, let me know. I'm here to help. He emailed me back in 10 minutes and basically said, what the F are you talking about? That the Army picked this guy. I specifically wanted an MOS queued guy. Why did they pick this guy and not you? And I said, I don't know. I'm just here. I'm just offering my help. He took it upon himself to go, listen, he told the infantry guy, he said, this isn't for you. You're not MOSQ. Called me back the next day. I got a call from Big Army and said, do you accept this position? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And served 3 years, started a unit from scratch. We had NPADs all over the country. I had them in Maryland, I had them in Texas and California. So all I did was for 3 years, drill one weekend and basically travel the other 2 weekends
So
across the country.
were you like a full time reservist or were you like a technician or
I was a regular reservist, but with all the time that's needed at that position, it was turning into 2 weeks a year, 2 weeks a month. And my wife was hating it. I wasn't seeing my kids, and it was freaking miserable because all I did was fly. I mean, you fly 5 hours to California, you meet for one day, you do what you got to do. The recruiting sucked out there. I had to establish relationships with California recruiters who they see this smooth talking guy from Boston with a bad accent and they didn't want to believe me at all. But it was just, I liked the soldiering. The traveling wasn't great, but the bad thing about it is you get to that level, it's all analytics. So
yeah.
our big daddy was MPs, and basically anyone can qualify for the MPs, supply, infantry. You don't need a high ASVAB score. You need a high ASVAB score in public affairs. I don't know why. I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to be a reporter. I mean, look at broadcast news now. I mean, they're a
Yeah.
bunch of idiots, right?
I was
So
wondering, yeah.
what's
So
that?
ask you, what was the worst part? Did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you have someone doing your DTS for you?
No, I did it myself.
Well, that probably would drive someone right out
I
of,
learned I learned when I was attached to the Pentagon. Now, I also in between that, I did a 3-year hitch. They named me the director of Army Public Affairs Southeast at Tampa. So I learned how to do it then. But you said the worst part of it was getting punched in the face every other month by the 2-star general and my boss, the command sergeant major, because we didn't have enough troops going to NCOS or we weren't recruiting enough. And they couldn't get it through their military police heads that not everyone could make it into public affairs. And they were tired of the excuses. And
Right.
me and my commander, Lieutenant Colonel Wendy Williams, who was a rough and tough Texas woman who talked with the worst Texas drawl, she looked at me and she said, I had enough of this shit. I'm retiring. And she retired. She got tired of getting punched in the face. Her husband was an 82nd airborne guy, deployed 5 times. They retired to a ranch in Texas. I lasted another year, and it just wasn't fun after that. The soldiering was always fun. The administrative and the analytics and the budgeting and shit like that, stuff that you would have got into if you had gone to that next level,
Yeah. That's
above what you do as a first sergeant. It's
yeah.
no fun.
Yeah, that's the part that I didn't want to leave, right? It was
Yeah.
I like being with the soldiers. I liked affecting them and doing that stuff. And I saw enough in the New York National Guard to know I didn't want to spend every other weekend for driving for free to the other side of the state to state headquarters to
Yeah.
do mandatory this or mandatory that. And I was like, it's it was that just wasn't. I felt like I'd be too far away. I would have got the lobotomy at Bliss
Yep.
and I would have just, look, I was born into the Army, Army brat. I've been around it enough that I knew what it was. And yeah, I mean, if I could have, stayed and been in a position where I could have still been very close to soldiers, like I said, it would have been good. But as a sergeant major, soldiers they don't want you to know them. It's just, it's
No.
the role to have. But
And I tried. I mean, I hated sitting in an office. I mean, my first our first Muta 5 was qualification at some base in Texas. I mean, I used to fly in from Tampa and get in to Texas on Friday night, have my E7 meet me at the airport, or either that or get in at like 8 o'clock Saturday morning if I couldn't catch. If I was working at CENTCOM Friday night, I had to fly out at like 6 Saturday morning. My E7, my training NCO, would pick me up at San Antonio Airport, drive me. I'd be working on no sleep because you work the overnight shift, juice me up with coffee, and then do a full day of training. But I mean, the soldiering I loved as a first sergeant, command sergeant major, just it was the administrative bullshit that I had no tolerance for, and that's not why I joined the army. And
right.
yeah,
So you called it at 29.
yep.
And do you still involved with soldiering at all or around the military? Have you found yourself like to evolve with any nonprofits or doing anything?
Oh, I started a VFW post when I got back here. Back in 2005 in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, just in Bradenton. I was a charter member. The first commander quit. I jumped in, All American Commander, AUSA. Oh, huge supporter for charities. I'm still active in the VFW post, although I don't go to all the meetings. But my oldest son is a captain promotable in military intelligence. He's in the D.C. region. My youngest son, Naval Academy graduate, went to be a Marine pilot. He's an Osprey pilot. They both got their first tours in. My oldest son in Afghanistan. My youngest son in Djibouti. So they're both veterans now. Love it. Huge supporter. And when all your friends are military, I mean, my best friend from Baghdad was a Marine major, Yankee fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. We're roommates, and he is the director of physical education at the Naval Academy. He took care of my son for 4 years, and 21 years later, we still talk to each other every month. I mean, he'll call me out of the blue. I mean, it's those relationships. So I mean, firsthand. I mean, you never lose those.
No, no. So do you guys still bet against each other when the Sox and the Yankees play?
Listen, short story. All right. Remember 2004. You remember 2004? The Yankees were up 3-zip over the Red Sox. I was absolutely miserable. We were living in the same trailer in the Republican Guard Palace and trailers. Back then, no one cared about General Order Number One. The games didn't start till 1 in the morning. We were going 24/7. We'd work 14-hour days, go to the gym, work out, eat, sleep for an hour, then party all night. And Sox were down 3-zip. All of a sudden, the Sox come back. It's 3-1, 3-2, 3-3. Game 7. This gutless New York Yankee fan and Marine says, "Oh, the SEALs asked me to run a mission with them up in Mosul for Game 7." I looked at him. I said, "You're a pussy." He left that day,
He didn't
that
want.
afternoon, yeah, and didn't come home for 2 days and wouldn't even look at me after the Yankees lost two at Game 7. So there's not even a rivalry. It's still a rivalry, but we beat the curse. The Yankees had the greatest choke in professional baseball history. So as far as I'm concerned, we're even.
There you go. There you go. You ever get back up? You got family in Boston in that area?
I do. I still got the sister. My wife has a sister up there. We every now and then. I mean, it we like it. I mean, if you grew up in Boston, you have a different view of it. Visiting Boston, it's one of the most historic cities in the world. I mean, my wife and I are huge Revolutionary War fans. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's Sunday nights on Fox Business. They have the battles of the Revolution, the great leaders, George Washington. They
Yeah.
tell it. We're huge Revolutionary War and huge Civil War fans. So when we lived in D.C., when I worked at the DIA, they had a historian who used to do 6-hour presentations at the major battles in Virginia for the Civil War. So we used to spend weekends doing that too. I mean, Boston is a great historical city, but I grew up there. I spent 39 years there. If I have to go to a wedding, fine. But I'm a Florida guy now, man. I'm comfortable down here. I don't
Like
like the cold anymore.
you look like you get good tan, and you can deal with the 15-minute rain shower every day. I'm
Oh,
sure,
Jesus, yeah, and a hurricane or two.
and a hurricane every once in a while. But good. Well, hey, we've been going about an hour, Steve, and it's been great. I knew it would fly by. I'll
Yeah.
give you a chance. Anything that you'd like our listeners and viewers to know, or anything that is just important to you we didn't cover that you want to make sure that they hear about, or any nonprofit that you want to make sure they know about?
No, just listen. I'm big into tunnel to towers right now. I love what the guy's doing, and just support your military. I mean, we're in a very weird stage right now. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we got a new SecDef in there. We're gonna. I mean, all the generals I work for are dinosaurs now. I mean, I used to brief the Petreuses and the Mattises, the Austins. They're out now. I mean, we've got a whole new generation now. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting 2 to 4 years. I mean, I want to see where we go, not only in the military but all of national security. I mean, we were talking beforehand when the president comes out, and we were laughing about this knowing the president, he says, "Yeah, I want the U.S. to clear out Gaza and I want to build hotels." And you people got to realize what this guy's doing. He's throwing stuff against the wall. What was his main goal? To get the Arab countries involved. What happened the next day? All of a sudden, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, all of them, Saudi Arabia, they're going
Yeah.
to rebuild Gaza. This guy is just it's a trip every day of the week.
Yeah, it's on our show we used to talk about when during the first one, people would ask us, like Tuesday, Wednesday, what are your show going to be on this week? Like, we'll just wait to Thursday because every day was something new.
Wait till he tweets something at 2 in the morning.
Right. And now, like you just said, it's going to be interesting next couple of years. Seeing how fast things are moving and what's happening every day. We haven't even gotten into DOD yet, right? Pete is in there. Pete's already changed Bragg back. He's done a couple of things. He's got rid of this. So, knowing Pete, he's cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
He's not following the same stereotypical path that all the other SecDefs have followed. And I think we are in for as much as surprising as just the administration has done with the country, with everything, Doge and cutting this and doing that. I think we're going to see the same thing in the military. Pete has been from day one very consistent that it is all about the warfighter, and
Thank God.
yeah, so I think we're going to see
It's
some.
about time, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you were in the army. I mean, was the Army Future Combat System the biggest freaking boondoggle in the world?
Oh, I worked for a couple years as a contractor for CERTIC for the Common Electronics Research Lab. Yeah, there were so many. There's so many programs that I literally watched oxygen thieves show up to work every day, stick their cat card in their computer, and
Yeah.
just waste money. There's a lot of areas to cut.
My God, I mean, I understand people are upset about losing jobs, and maybe that could have been done with a little bit more a gentle way, but I applaud what they're doing, cutting the waste, and it's just a start. I mean, I'm just sitting back and enjoying the show. I mean, this guy said he wants payment from Ukraine with minerals, and everyone said, "You're freaking nuts. It's never going to happen." What's happening tomorrow? Zelensky's coming in and signing a deal.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, look what happened. He announced the tariffs before he look at the stuff he got done before he even before
Yeah,
the right.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and then the tariffs came, and it was like, oh my God, you're putting tariffs on Canada, and Mexico, but did not take long for them to turn around. Right. Colombia said, no, we're turning your plane back, and next thing you know, they're sending. It is that's
They're down to 200 interdictions a day at the
right.
border.
And tomorrow morning, apparently, the Epstein files are coming out. They found them hidden in the New York FBI office,
Oh,
and Pam
Jesus.
put them on call. And
Who's moving to Europe tomorrow?
yeah, uh, a lot of them had already started. So between P Diddy and Epstein,
Ooh,
a lot
Jesus.
that are. But yeah, so that's supposed to drop tomorrow. It's going to make for a very exciting Friday news day if those.
Thank God for Florida, man. We got Pam Bondi there.
Yeah,
You got Marco Rubio, who I think. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I was living in Virginia in 2016. I voted for Rubio over Trump in the primary. I'm a huge Rubio supporter. He's going to do great things on the diplomatic front. The
well,
guy is talented.
yeah, if things keep going like they are, in my opinion, only my opinion,
Yeah.
between JD Vance and Rubio and some of the others, the next administration or the next
Oof.
the next 8 years after these four is just probably going to be a powerhouse itself. I
Can't wait.
heard today that the Dems are talking about trying to get Cuomo to come and run in 28. That's how
I
desperate
I was watching the local Fox station. This guy.
they are.
Jesus, man, come
Yeah,
on.
they got
They're
nobody.
t- they're still talking Kamala Harris running and
Yeah,
Gavin Newsom. Come on.
I mean that really, as a conservative, I'm all for it.
You
Put
might as well put Elizabeth Warren up there too.
yeah, her and Cory Booker. There you go. But
One of the great lines, I think, I'm not sure who said it. Maybe it was Trump, but the closest thing that Elizabeth Warren had to being was a Cherokee was driving a cheap Cherokee.
yeah, I heard that one. Well, hey, thank you so much, Steve, for coming. We're going to have you on again. Also,
Absolutely.
have you on our Lima Charlie show.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know you got to have a lot, and I just want to just talk current events with you sometime too. So I think that
Dude, anytime you want. I mean, I'm an avid follower of news. I still get the CENTCOM daily news clips from CENTCOM. I'm in the know a little bit of what's happening there. Got some different outlooks on it, but I'd love to be back on. You're doing a great thing here.
thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Rob, for running the production.
Thanks, Rob.
And just hold on for a second, Steve, after we close.
All right.
Rob, go ahead and let's go and wrap this up if we can.